executive order issued by the governor of the state of Rhode Island, which is executive order number 22-01. This meeting is going to be conducted virtually via Zoom. Our first item on our agenda is an executive session. So I would ask for a motion to recess to executive session for discussions of job performance, character, or physical or mental health of a person or persons, provided that such person or person affected have been notified in advance and advised that they may require the discussion be held in an open meeting. That's 4246(5)(a)(1), as well as potential litigation, legal advice, which is Rhode Island General Law 4246(5)(a)(2), and a discussion of any investigative proceedings regarding allegations of misconduct, civil or criminal, pursuant to 4246(5)(a)(4). If I could have a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor, if I could have a motion.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. So we are going to convene our executive session. I'm going to remove any non-school committee members into the waiting room. We hope to convene our open meeting at approximately 7 o'clock, give or take. We'll try to be as on time as we can. Thank you. And we'll just wait a moment while I do that. 11th, 2022. This is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. And pursuant to an executive order issued by the governor of the state of Rhode Island, executive order number 22-01, this meeting is being conducted by Zoom. So it's going to be a virtual meeting. And someone just mentioned who I forgot, and now I fixed that. Okay, sorry, folks. We're a little rusty on the Zoom thing, so please bear with us. So I'm going to, we've called the meeting to order. I'm going to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public for which it's okay. Next, Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll. Ibis, I think you should be able to speak.
It'll be Joni tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then maybe I didn't. Oh, got it. That's the problem. Hold on a second. Let's fix that. Mrs. Beisel, are you there? Sorry about that.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that. If you could please call the roll.
I got it. I got you. Okay, Mr. Blasberg,
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand,
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins,
Here.
Mrs. Lima, here, Mr. Mather,
Here.
Mrs. Schott, Sally.
She's not here this evening. She mentioned she wouldn't be able to attend.
Okay, thanks. How about Brooke Thompson and Gabriel, our
Let's
student
see.
reps?
I don't see either of them in the lists. If
Okay,
they are, if the two student reps, if you are here, if you could raise your hand, it'll help me find you, but I don't see them. I think that's it. Thank you.
okay, thanks.
Okay, and if you could please call the calendar.
Sure. Monday, January 17th is Martin Luther King Day. For a reminder, no school. And next school committee business meeting is Tuesday, January 25th.
Thank you very much. So we have a couple presentations today. Dr. Roger, do you want to introduce those first and then we'll hand them
I'd
off?
like to do a couple of quick recognitions first, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
I'd like to start with an acknowledgement, actually, that we have received notice that the U.S. Attorney will be launching a civil investigation to review the district's responses to reports of staff misconduct. This investigation was initiated after a complaint was filed with their office. It is the duty and responsibility of the U.S. Attorney to investigate claims like this, just as the North Kingstown Police Department has done, and as the Rhode Island Attorney General and School Department continue to do in separate investigations. As I've stated before, we feel it is critical that our own investigation continues to the fullest extent possible. The North Kingstown School Department will continue to fully cooperate with all investigations to ensure that all details of this matter are documented and fully reviewed. At this time, we are awaiting the completion of Attorney Oliverio's investigation before taking any additional actions as a district. That takes care of that announcement for now. I know Dr. Mansiri has one recognition, but I don't see her. Mr. Blasball, could you get her video? And I think she's kind of locked out.
Good.
But I would, in the meantime, like to acknowledge a student athlete at North Kingstown High School, Abby Rhino, was named today as the Gatorade Player of the Year for female volleyball. That's a huge honor for the state. Great for Abby. She was actually at her own little media conference with Channel 12 at Forest Park, her elementary school, with her coach, Coach Garapi, who also works at Forest Park. And she will be attending the University of Louisiana at Monroe next year, where she will be playing Division I beach volleyball. So that's a tremendous honor for her. Dr. Mansiri?
Hi, everybody. I have two presentations and an acknowledgement. So I'm going to start off with the acknowledgement. It's came from Janice Strain, the high school art teacher who works tirelessly at the high school to promote art for all and have access for all. So we have 3 different art acknowledgements. The first one, a total of 49 pieces of art were accepted into the Celebrating Art East Fall 2022 full color anthology hardbound book from the visual arts students at the high school. Celebratingart.com is devoted to the promotion, appreciation, and record of the creative work of today's student artists. The next one is Olivia Wood won first place in the XQ Billboard Challenge. This was a national student challenge, and Elisa Hernandez placed 8th. Both young women placed in the top 10 and will receive a creative home studio that includes an iPad, Apple Pencil, Procreate software, and a spotlight for Freedom's National Conference. Both students will now work with designers so that their artwork that explores powerful visions of racial equity becomes showcased on the billboard in the Rhode Island community. And since this writing, we've been notified that Elisa Hernandez's design will now be on the following billboard sometime between February 1st and February 8th, and it's going to run through February 28th. The first billboard is on 92 Dean Street in Providence, Rhode Island. The second billboard is 531 Main Street in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And I'm going to make sure we include the links to the billboards in the school committee minutes for all who would like to see the award-winning work of our art students. And then finally, Elisa Hernandez again won first place, and Amanda Cruz came in second in the first ever National Hispanic Heritage High School Art Competition. Elisa received 250, Amanda received 150, and the Visual Arts Department at the high school received 250 in gift cards. It's just congratulations to all, and a big thank you again to Janice Strain. She's always gone out of her way to find competitions to get our students' artwork out there to be seen and shown. And I really love being able to talk about all of this. The next thing, I guess I'm just going to continue right on because it seems to me like the one with the presentations. So I'm going to share my screen. Am I allowed to do that? Do I have?
You should be able to. If you can't,
Okay.
let me know.
All right. So the first thing that let's see.
That worked.
Okay. And I'm going to go to slideshow. Oopsie, let me just back up here. Sorry, everybody. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to be discussing this evening is our next generation science assessment results. They came out just right before Christmas, and we had a few other things on the docket. So in order for us to look at everything and to get this together, we thought this was the best time to go forward. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the next generation science standards, they're administered in grades 5, 8, and 11 to measure students' knowledge and practices of the next generation science standards. It's like a K to 12 set of standards developed and adopted. We're in a coalition with 26 states. So a little background. This is the second year because we skipped over 1920 due to a pandemic, and RIDE had that skip over. Again, I said the 5, 8, and 11. And this year, 92% of our students tested with an 82% statewide. And in a little bit more of an overall NGSA summary, state overall, 32% meeting or exceeding expectations. North Kingstown overall is 58% meeting or exceeding expectations. And actually the expectations in 2019, we had gone from 56 to 58. And in 2019, the state was at 31.3. So everybody moved up, creeped up just a little bit. So here is just a brief overlook at our district. Overall, the district's improved, as you can see. North Kingstown High School, Stony Lane, Forest Park improved. Davisville Middle, Hamilton, Quid, and Fishing Cove were statistically the same as last year. And again, I'm going to put this presentation up on our website for anybody that needs to go back and really pour over the slides. So on this particular slide that you're looking at right here, you see the state is in blue and North Kingstown School Department is in orange. And it's the percent of meeting or exceeding expectation. Those two percentages were added together. And the percentage of students meeting expectations in grade 11 rose just over 5.2%, from 30.5% to 35.7%. And what I ended up doing here is just taking the decimals off, so you can see that it's 36%. So really, what the state went up about 5%, and so did we. And I'm gonna in a slide coming up in just a little bit, though, there's a little bit more to celebrate with our high school, and I want to make sure that I take a minute to congratulate them. So the 11th graders, you can see it's at 67%. They had gone from 61.4 to 67.4, and just over 6%. So really it takes a lot if you have some people on the side of your screen when you're looking at these, the blocks on top of one another. The reason that we do that is because there's 4 different areas. There's the not meeting, the partially meeting, the meeting, and the exceeding. The blue and the green is really where you always want to put your eyes, because that's where we're exceeding or meeting expectations respectively. And so please note, at the middle school, right in the middle, grade 8, and the elementary, grade 5, the not meeting, all right, that's the yellow and the red, is less than half of the state. So even though, everybody is creeping up, we're still the North Kingstown School Department still fares very well as compared to the rest of the state. And again, the high school has 2.5 times the state in exceeding. So if you go to the far right, if you look at the 40 versus the 16 in the blue area, and 1% not meeting versus the state. So if you go down to the very bottom of the North Kingstown High School and you look at the red, they have 1% there. And overall, the state has 8%. And those are big differences. So we have subpopulations that we always like to take a look at. And this is always room for improvement here and to work on it. The MLL students, our multilingual learners, are not represented here because the N size is too low at those grade levels to put it in. They have a certain criteria that you have to meet in order to put them in. So what I do want you to note, the male and the female on the bottom 2 rows, on the left-hand side. If you notice, the males in 5th grade, they score 14 percentage points higher than the female. By 8th grade, the females have caught up and the males have slowed down a little bit. And by 11th grade, the females have surpassed the males by 7%. So we're really going to need, as a district, to look into this, also with our special ed population across all grade levels and our economically disadvantaged in grades 5 through 8. You'll see the economically disadvantaged at the high school is 65%, which is pretty close to what the entire school scored. So that is definitely something that's going well in the subgroups. So here's where I wanted to take a minute to really look at the high school in this particular slide. I said back on the other slide that the state had moved up by 5 and we moved up by 6 in the high school area in grade 11. But and you can notice if you look at this slide, I'll take you through it a little bit. I can't see because let me just move everybody over here. Okay, so if you took a look to the far right, you might have to minimize if you can see everybody on your far right, but you can see North Kingstown High School is 67.2%. And if you go down, you'll see we're just shy of East Greenwich. And this is very comparable schools to North Kingstown. And East Greenwich is 68.2%. And so that alone is wonderful. But if you look over back to the left-hand side, the 3rd column, it talks about the percentage of students that are tested. And North Kingstown was able to get 91.4% of our students tested. And if you compare that to East Greenwich, they had a 76.6%. And that little marker there with the exclamation point is noted on the Rhode Island Department of Ed website is that the percentage of students tested is below 85%. So it's just something to note. It's something that we take a look at. And then if you look at Barrington, who's right behind us, they also have the number of test takers decreased considerably, and as well as South Kingstown. So I really want to take a moment, because the teachers in the special education department and also the science department work collaboratively. This has been something they've been working on for quite a few years, to be looking at inquiry-based, and in an effort to get participation in one of the most challenging times during COVID last spring. And they worked together also with the administration to get as many bodies in the chairs as possible. And then also, I really like to appreciate the students' effort while sitting for the assessment to measure their knowledge and practices of the next generation science standards. I think it's truly notable to highlight the grade 11 students, the teachers, and the administration and the students before I go forward. The cherry on top really is how we compare to the rest of the districts in the state. I really just wanted to highlight that. And finally, I'd like to take a moment and talk a little bit about the strategies that we have in place and what's going on with RIDE and what we're doing. So over the past school year, RIDE administered its first ever survey of schools' science curriculums. They do that every year for all schools, for English and for math. And this year, by asking people about their science and what we have available, they're going to be taking stock and what our needs are. And the second thing is, in this coming year, 21 districts, including North Kingstown, are administrating an interim assessment to students. North Kingstown is participating in grades 8 and 11 to identify strengths and areas for improvement for future science instruction. And all of these steps are part of RIDE's larger LEAP plan to accelerate student learning, including support for local education agencies, blueprints for multilingual learners, differently abled student learning, extended learning opportunities, and greater social emotional supports for our students. So I'll be talking a little bit more about LEAP in the next presentation. And then we're continuing with our GEMSNet science training, which what they do is an intensive training for any new teacher, or also if a teacher goes from, let's say, teaching grade 3 to teaching grade 5, they also get put into professional learning for the year to make sure they know about all the new kits and what are the standards in that particular grade. And again, the high school science department working with the special education department collaboratively to make sure that they are hitting all the areas so that they're bringing down the students that aren't meeting the standards and they're bringing up the students that are meeting the standards. So I'd like to thank you for your patience as you watch that. And I have one more. I can answer. I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, how you'd like to do this. I could answer questions on this first, or I can continue and get the ESSER presentation up, and then I can answer questions on both.
I think it would make sense to stop for a moment and see if anyone has any questions on these science results. Any members have any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay, Ms. Hoskins.
Just, I know we did have, like you said, a higher percentage of overall students testing, which is, a great stat, especially with COVID, but looking at the numbers of kids that didn't test and the increases, how many of those, do you know how many are sort of from the free and reduced lunch or the FRL population?
Well, our free and reduced population has remained stagnant for the last couple of years because the government's allowing all of us, all of the school districts, to provide free and reduced lunch for everybody.
So do we know who didn't test, if they were from more of a disadvantaged population?
Out of our 90, the 8% that didn't test?
Right.
I can find that answer for you and get it to you, but this is, no, I don't have it on my hand right now.
Okay.
Any other?
Yeah, I have a quick
Mather?
And I apologize, Denise, I probably should have emailed this to you
That's okay.
in advance. It looks like most of the schools either stayed relatively consistent with the 2018 and 2019, except Wickford Middle. Do you know what happened and why we went from 64% to 51% at Wickford Middle?
I would have to look at what how many students were there and the population. I'm trying to think of it right now. Allison Palladino is aware, and we're going to be looking at that particular thing. And we can look at a little bit deeper into the stats, because this is a presentation at the beginning of the thing. I have only a certain amount of time to be able to do that. And rather than highlight one school that had some difficulty, I prefer to, to be talking about, but we are definitely going to look into that, because that school normally stays,
Oh, yeah.
Statistically significant. But I would say, like, as this, they're normally also recognized as like the second highest or first highest middle school in the state. So I do want you to know that I'm at the 8th grade and at the 5th grade, those schools throughout the state did not do well, as they didn't do well like the high schools did. So I think there's something going on across the state. And what Rye did say something at the end, that they were going to make sure that they looked at if it made a difference because of a number of people that participated. So I have the high school there, but we'll go digging deeper into, and I can come back to the committee actually and talk about the free and reduced and talk about Wickford and Middle to make sure I get the answers for you.
All right, Denise, just real quick on that Wickford Middle.
Yeah.
Just, curious, if you said it's those grades across the state, is there a way to find out if it was certain test questions? Did everybody get them wrong? Like certain.
Yeah, that is
and they
exactly
pull
what
that
they're going to be
information so
looking
we-
into, because they said it was notable that the high schools were able to grow, and that the 5th grade and the 8th grade, they either stayed stagnant, went down, or there'd be like a 0.8. It was not significant statistically. So
And then
that's why. So DMS stayed the same, and got up, I think, by 1 point, and I'll have it in front of me right now. And then Wickford did go. It is noticeable, and we are going to take a look to see if there's anything on our end that needs to be done. At the high school a few years back, what we noticed that the standards for inquiry that's where we were falling short. So at the time, the department chair, Rick Powell, he decided that we were going to do a lot with inquiry-based stuff. Like, that was the area that was falling down. So if it's something like that, then we can go ahead and take a look at it. And that's
So will we
also why
add
Rich Sweetman and Amy Maserlian, the 2 department chairs for the science at the high school and for the special ed, got together to make sure that they were digging into those questions. And so I like to think that all of that effort there is what's really brought the high school even surpassing 2.5 times. But at the Wickford Middle, I honestly, right now, I don't have the answer for you, so we can dig into it.
So if we look into that and then find something, we can add it to the school improvement plan or do
School
something.
improvement plan, because and also the ESSER funds, which I am going to be talking about shortly. There is a thing about getting remediation for those students that there's a gap, either achievement or growth. So we want to take a look at and also in the science area, you've heard me talk about the legislation for ELA and math and how we have to have the high quality curriculum by 2023. Well, we have to have the high quality curriculum by 2025 for science. And so while we like what's going on right now, we've seen significant progress in our students in the science area. There right now, the Rhode Island Department of Ed is supposed to be going through curricula and making sure that there are opportunities for different LEAs to look at new curriculum. And they have not yet talked about what is available. There's like 1 or 2 that people are looking at, different districts are looking at, but there is no chart overall. But yeah, we would definitely take a look if we needed to. Jen?
I have one. So, and I apologize, I didn't ask you for this sooner. I think hearing you go through it made the question pop up. So I think this chart is great. I'd love to see it for the other schools, like the other grade levels, if possible, just to see that comparison. Of course, the dogs are barking, sorry. And then out of curiosity, to see a side by side with I know we didn't do it last year, but the year before, just to see with a full student body testing what the comparisons are to the other districts. Is that possible?
So you're asking for all of, so the slide that I showed that had R2, you want to have you want to have this particular slide for each individual school?
No, just by grade. Out
Okay.
of curiosity, just, the one I'm looking at is the 2021 district high school comparison. So just by grade for that, for this
Okay.
year and for the prior year.
So 5th grade and then 8th grade.
Yep. And then to compare it to, I'd like to see like if you have the full complement of students testing in the other districts, kind of where we compared at that time.
Against the same districts that I did for the high school.
Yep.
And Jen, RIDE has their data portal, which is actually got a tremendous amount of information that you can filter through individual schools, individual grades in particular schools, and compare them all against each other. It's actually fairly user-friendly a little bit. But just right on their website, tons and tons of that information is available.
Okay, yeah, I've been on there for other things. I haven't looked for this. This is out there too?
I think what you're talking about is on the
Okay.
RIDE website.
It was released, yeah, it was open, it's open to the public, but honestly, if you can look
No,
at
then
it, and if you don't
it's-
see something that you want, you can ask me to pull
Yep,
it together.
I'll go out there and get it. Thank you.
I can send you.
Any other questions? All right, if not, Dr. Mansouri, I'll have you move on.
Okay, thank you. Get to my next. Three. Alrighty, so we are on to the American Rescue Plan, which a lot of people are calling ESSER 3. So I put it as ESSER 3 so it would be a little more familiar to people. So in order to receive the ESSER 3 funds, one of the requirements from RIDE is to have stakeholder input. So what we ended up doing is creating a survey and sending it out back on December 17th. And we're also going to we've been to one not school committee meeting, I apologize, one PTO meeting so far. And then we'll be going to 3 tomorrow night. We'll be going to 1 on Thursday night. We're going to all the PTO meetings to make sure that if there's any follow-up, we can get some more information. And so I just want to note to the audience, if there's going to be some areas that I'm showing, it's basically, there was priorities that we put in place, and we asked people to put them in order 1 through 4 for us. But then we also gave people an opportunity to write in additionally under each priority what they thought if we didn't have it down. And so if there was a one-off, an outlier, we couldn't include it. It would have been too long. So what we did is we looked for themes, and then we created the slides, and we put the themes together, and then we show the how many people voted for that. So just so you're aware of how the process came about. All right. I think that's good. So here is the LEAP task force priorities. One of the things that the Rhode Island Department of Ed did after the first year of COVID is they asked a group of people to get together, and the 5 things that they came up with. So I think there was about 32 people. It had administrators, teachers, community members, and they met about 8 times. And they had different experts come in, and when they were all done, and they made recommendations for the Department of Ed, and the Department of Ed came up with these 5 different priorities. The first, and so we had to use these priorities when we were writing for the ESSER 2, and everything that we did had to fall underneath one of these. So when I was writing for that, you'd see like the first one is really been kind of not elusive, but they wanted to do like some really big thing with back to school attendance, because September is a big attendance month in across the United States. So we got some banners and we did things, but what was happening is parents have the right to keep their kids home if they don't want them to go in. So the number one kind of seemed to not really get any traction. So we're going to take a look at that again. Number 2, a lot of traction. Number 3, the universally screen all students. That's all of our STAR assessment, our Ames web, that's for academics. We're also going to be looking at a screener. We were looking at a screener for wellness, but we put that on hold. Improve and support student transitions across grades. That's when they're coming in from like K to 1 and or preschool to K, and then going to 8th grade, then going up to 9th grade, and then closing the digital divide. So all of those things are the umbrella that I have to use in order to write for the next things that we're going to be using. Again, plus we have to make sure that we get the stakeholder information. So here were the 4 different categories: high quality materials, science of reading, professional learning, and the learning supports and intervention, including social, emotional, and mental health. So everybody out there decided, if you take a look at the blue bars, that's the first priority. All right, so if you take a look at that, the learning support and intervention, including social, emotional, and mental health, created the number 1 spot. And we think that, if you look at the second thing, if you start looking at the second priority, you can see how things kind of level off. But so now we were looking at the learning supports and also the high quality curriculum. And that is really where we have spent a lot of our money. So it was it was nice to see a support for those 2 areas, to take a look at that and to know that we're heading in the right direction, and that parents want us, parents, teachers, administrators, students would like us to head in that direction. The science of reading, I'll go over that in a minute. I think some people, I didn't do a very good job of explaining what that was, and some people didn't know what that was. So it might have gotten a little lost in the shuffle. And then professional learning, while there are people that really wanted us to continue with professional learning, I think they know through a bunch of the presentations we've had that we have professional learning scheduled for all of the new curricula. So the biggest by far is that learning supports, followed by high quality curriculum, science of reading, and professional learning. All right, so the next slide, this is what I was talking about. We started looking at the themes. So under high quality curriculum, the reason why I'm doing high quality curriculum first and I'm not doing the learning supports is because in the form that the parents and educators filled out, this was the first question. So I want to make sure I'm doing it in the same order as the form. So you can take a look here and you can see that there's no one-offs here, but you can see certainly that trade books in our high quality curriculum, trade books, STEAM and STEM came up high, inquiry, project-based learning, and tech hardware were all together under that. When you see a ... I'll try to make sure that you understand what that is. So that had the ... was the project-based learning and tech hardware. And it was followed by tech software, textbooks and DEI books, the social emotional learning in the classroom, the outdoor classrooms, field trips in the arts. All right, and finally languages. Continue. And then again, I am going to be taking this PowerPoint and I'm going to be posting it on, it'll be in the minutes and it'll also be posted on the website. So I will not be reading quotes to you that you certainly can read. But I did want to include them because it was all over the board, from, having marginalized groups, including women, BIPOC, and LGBTQ well represented their stories, to no CRT teachings in North Kingstown. So the next thing, I just wanted to take a moment and I wanted to talk about the science of reading. And I thought sometimes most people are visual learners. So I thought this might be helpful. We talk about the science of reading a lot, and it's been really, the Rhode Island legislature has put through a law that all of our teachers are going to be educated again, if they haven't already, in the science of reading. So what I want you to notice is the lower strand, the blue and green strand, is word recognition. And it consists of phonological awareness, decoding, and word recognition. When these skills are frequently practiced, automaticity, accuracy, and fluency are achieved. If you add that with the upper strand, language comprehension, all right, that's developing and integrating background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge, together with a great deal of practice, time, and explicit instruction. These two strands are woven into the outcome, a skilled reader who can fully comprehend a myriad of text. So at the bottom, the word recognition is really our early learners. And then we add to it as they get older. So they must have both in order to be able to read. And if you have 50% of one, you're not going to read well and you're not going to understand. And that's why the science of reading is so important. So I understand why it's being legislated. I just wanted to make sure that I explain it well, and I will be coming back again because we're going to be spending some funds in order to educate and to make sure all of our teachers are trained in the science of reading. So of the people that did understand what the science of reading was, and then also if the people that wanted to add a little something else along with the science of reading, again, they wanted to make sure the science of reading obviously is number one, but then new books or anthologies, outdoor classrooms so that students can go outside when it's nice and do their reading there, a reading incentive program, library media specialists in every building, an intervention, and also community partners and guest authors. I should say interventionists. Okay, so let me continue. Here is some feedback on the science of reading. People really want the books, they want the training and a time to work together, engaging with community partners, and again, the training, a lot of stuff on the training and why it's important for classroom teachers. All right, the next was on professional learning and asking people once, is there anything else besides that you want us to know about professional learning? And what specific ideas, if any, do you have for the category of professional learning to support the implementation of the new ELA and math curricular resources was the question. And it was time for grade level meetings, training on current curriculum to continue, instructional coaches, science of reading and social emotional learning training, real world skills and early numeracy, technology and TA, which are teacher assistant training. Okay, and then again, the feedback on this professional learning, asking not just to teach about math, but to actually understand the concepts. And at the bottom, we have spotting dyslexia, monitoring and troubleshooting for those who aren't learning at the same rates as their peers. And finally, the learning supports. So when you take a look at the learning supports, we asked what specific ideas, if any, do you have for the category of learning supports and interventions? And the number one by far, you can see up there, is the SEL and the mental health supports. It got cut off. It just says mental, but it's mental health supports. The next one is academic interventions, before and after school programs, more teacher assistance and communication with families, summer learning in late buses and lower class sizes, financial literacy, that snuck in, study skills, organization, and tutors and enrichment, STEAM, and safe and clean schools. And here are some feedback on the learning supports. Focus on programs that build support, create a safe environment, and emotional environment. And again, allocate resources towards identifying students who are falling behind their peer group. So another question we had to ask after those four is, we really need to go back in because Wickford Middle School had a significant air quality issue, just being able to have it turn. And what we wanted to know is, do we have support out in the community for continuing with that particular work? And it was 1 was a low priority and 5 was a high priority. And it really shows that people in the town want the funds to be spent on upgrading facilities for safe operations of our schools. And how would you rate upgrading Wickford Middle School's ventilation system? It looks like people are okay with us continuing to spend some of the money that we receive from the American Rescue Plan on that particular work. And then finally, we asked, should additional ESSER 3 funds remain? I'm not sure they're going to remain, but if there is anything remaining after North Kingstown School Department has responded to all categories outlined above, what other areas would you like to see these funds support? And it says safe and healthy schools was number 1. Building classroom upgrades, COVID testing, and outdoor classrooms it includes. The next theme was mental health, program staff, social emotional supports, before and after school programs, academic support for clubs, enrichment, extracurricular, athletics, and playgrounds. Human resources, and that included any staff that people wanted us to hire for academic supports, including TAs. Then there was the arts, including theater and music. And finally, late buses and field trips. Okay, if we take a look at the suggestions for the additional ESSER 3 suggestions, again, the arts came through loud and clear on multiple people. And then also you can just see before and after school, and school safety and upgrades was on everybody's mind. And it was actually a strand that went well through a couple of different, it's like some people would try to put it at every area, but we wanted to make sure we put in the areas where it was. Okay. And that's it. And I just want to thank everybody again for taking the time to listen to this and to know where the feedback currently is coming in and where we're going to be concentrating once I'm starting to write right now. There's preliminary areas where I can fill some things in. And so I'm doing that right now. It's due at the end of the month. So it's going to be a quick turnaround time. Every time we're going to the PTO, I just want to underscore what is already here or what we're already doing, or making sure we're adding it to the additional ESSER 3 suggestions. So if I can, and I want you to, like, we started looking at this on Monday of last week when we first came back. That's when we started looking at it. So it was a quick turnaround time, but we, we did the typical thing. If you're looking at qualitative research and being able to grab and create themes. So I feel pretty comfortable with the assessment of where we're going. And I'd love to open it up for questions, Chair Blasberg, if you think that that's appropriate right now.
Sure. Any members have any questions on the presentation? I'd like to thank you, Dr. Mansieri, for both presentations. Anyone have any questions?
Yep, I have just one, I think.
Mrs. Silverman?
Thank you. This is great. Really, really helpful information. I think what I'm wondering is the meetings that you're doing with the PTOs, how you're capturing that information. Are you surveying them, or are you just having conversations?
Oh,
and you're going to add that to this?
Yeah, we're having conversations. So we told principals about it. I told them.
Denise, you got an issue with
your microphone is
your microphone.
Your
you
audio
sound like
just
a
went
robot.
horribly bad.
Stop sharing. Can you hear me now?
It's still the same.
Okay, let me turn this off.
You were fine until a second ago.
How about now?
No.
We can come back to it.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay, what I'd suggest is try to leave the meeting, come back in. Okay, so we'll put a pin in that for a minute. Next would be to turn things over to Dr. Auger for his presentation on the preliminary budget.
Okay, I'm assuming that everyone can see this slide.
Not yet.
No, can you give me?
You should be able to.
All right, I thought I had just done this. Oh, okay. I think I know what I did wrong. Sorry. Share screen. Now I'll do this. Better?
Not yet.
Okay, sorry. Apologize.
There you go. While you work on that, Dr. Shea, let me just see. Dr. Mansieri, can you try talking again?
Hi, Greg.
All right, why don't we get that question in and then we'll pick up. So Lisa, if you could,
Want me to repeat the question?
yeah.
So the meetings with the PTOs, I think you started to say that they are conversations, but I'm wondering how you're going to incorporate what you learn at those meetings into the slides. And then are we going to have additional information that you'll share with us at some point about those PTO conversations?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that, so what we did at the first one with the Fishing Cove, and right now it's pretty scarce, the amount of people that are, so they basically have their president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer are there along with the principal. And so we took, based on what I showed them, and I showed them some similar things that you saw. And then I asked if we were missing anything. And then I have, along with me, I have Dr. Clark, Jody Clark, and she, if I was talking, she would take notes and vice versa.
Mhm.
And so we've been bringing that back in, and they were interested in a few things that we wrote down. And what I think I could do is, at the time, we had not gone through all of this yet. It was the night of, I think it was Monday night, last Monday night. So we wrote down their stuff, and then as we were looking at this, we're like, oh wow, look, there are things that were coming up. So what I can do is, again, I can take a note right now, and I can report out on if there was any differences, things like that. I can give you, just some of the notes that we're taking, but it's not as as easy to show because it's going to be all qualitative. Okay. Anybody's welcome to come, though. Anybody's welcome. Some of them are in person, and some of them are virtual. So based upon your particular school, you just want to ask the principal whether it's virtual or not.
So if there are community members that miss the opportunity to do the survey, they might want to contact their schools to see if they can participate in the PTO level conversations.
Yeah, and then they also can send something to the principal, and the principal, like again, one of the things we did is we had a meeting on Monday, all the administrators were there. I went over everything with them, and I let them know, like, if there's something that rises to a level at your school that you're not seeing right now, that we need to know about it, because there are things, the minute, there's only so much money. The minute we roll over, the Whitford Middle School, or the ESS funds for the mental health, or things like that, the interventionists, we're starting to get pretty small pretty quickly. And it's for 2 years, because we have until September of 24 to spend the money. So whatever I do, I want to try to stretch it out over 2 years to make sure that we're able to see some growth and be able to close some gaps.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had one quick question. I saw the numbers on the presentation that showed how many people had answered each question. Do we know what percentage of our school family population responded, roughly?
Yes, the school families were the majority. I can get that for you as Dr. Auger is doing this, and I can give it back to you.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious to know 5%, 20%, 50.
No, they were most percent. I have us. I have it on the form. I can go in and get it for you.
No, I'm sorry, Denise. I meant like what percentage of people responded to the survey?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. So let's just say there was 300 people. I'd say almost 200 were parents.
Okay. So
I can get that for you. There's a slide on the form.
So in terms of the whole district, it's not a large representation population.
No, but everybody had the opportunity to do it.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to get a feel for, like Lisa said, if people, the email went out around Christmas time, not faulting anything. It's just, that's a difficult period for a lot of people. So in terms of juggling everything, so maybe a good reminder, like you said, Lisa, of if you weren't able to participate in the survey, maybe pop in, give some input.
Right, that's why I'm doing multiple different, that's why we're doing that PTO cruise, because of that. Yeah, I mean, it got sent down the 17th. Sometimes it happens often when budgeting, things don't fall nicely. They just come when they come. And so we had to send out a survey, otherwise I wouldn't get this.
Oh, no, I totally get that. Just if there's any way we can kind of capture a little bit more input, I think that's great that you're going out to the schools and trying to get that. So that's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Dr. Auger?
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Manseri, for those two presentations. I mean, what you oversee is a ton of work, and I really appreciate all that's gone into collecting all of this information and presenting it to the community. So I want to shift gears a little bit. We are at the beginning of budget season, everyone. It feels like we almost never leave budget season, but here we are. Tonight is the night that I make a proposal to the school committee about, what they would then request to the town council. And later on in the spring, the town council would take up this item. So there'll be a number of public meetings where we are discussing these topics. We've already had one back in December where I talked about some of these same points. I have only 2 slides tonight. This is the first one, and the second one talks about the magic number. A little over 3% is what in terms of town funding. But I wanted to begin by just talking about some of the considerations that we have to be dealing with. There's never been a year where the state aid number is been more inconsistent. There have been some corrections in past years because of COVID conditions, because of, in some cases, students like leaving districts, and a lot of the state aid number depends on student populations. So there are a number of districts that could be looking, if they just go by the regular formula, could be looking at loss of funds. And North Kingstown could be in that group. The other piece of this is that there are a lot of surplus funds at the State House right now, and a lot of elected officials who would be eager to use that funding to kind of make up for the shortfall in state aid balances. So we're still kind of in the middle of that process. That could go all the way till June, so that makes budgeting all the more difficult, but we're trying to get the best numbers that we can. And Mrs. King is with us tonight, and she will talk about that a little bit as well. In the past year, because of going into COVID and some of the savings that we were able to incur, we felt like this would be a good time. While this is not a practice we generally like to do, it has a lot of bad ramifications, but we are, I'm proposing that we're using $500,000 from our fund balance to cover for a shortfall in our funding. And we're going to need every dime of that. And in previous years, we have at least mentioned that we'd be committed for 3 years to use $500,000 to kind of slowly build our way out of, the issues that we had due to budgeting around COVID. We, just like everybody else in the world, are looking at supply chain issues, inflationary issues that they're hard to predict. We are looking at increasing costs for healthcare at 5% or more, wages at 2 to 3%. We have 2 collective bargaining agreements. This is the first time since I've been superintendent that we have been bargaining with both, unions at the same time this year. So it's going to be a lot of work, but it also presents numbers that we just don't know yet because they are yet to be negotiated. So that is an unknown as well. We have an increase in mental health services that we need to be looking to fund for the long term. We've needed this for years. We were able to get some of it using ESSER funds at the high school, for instance, at a recent meeting. But we certainly, need to shore this up. And as Dr. Manseri's presentation talked about, there is a demand, at least from the people who responded to that survey, that, social emotional, the work that we do in that regard, be something that we improve upon and fund, more strongly. We are seeing staffing shortages at all levels, and it's just a difficulty in getting all of our employees. We've been very lucky with our teaching staff, our TA population. We have open jobs if anybody's interested. We talked previously about substitutes. These are difficulties experienced all around the state. Even those who are, our vendors, for, custodial care and, that sort of thing. or, the group that we sign on with to help us get substitutes, they're having difficulties finding workers. So that's a challenge for us. We have, talked over the years about, needs that we really feel the importance of increasing as we go forward, incorporating technology, for instance, and security needs into our regular operating budget. We've done that to some extent, but not nearly as much as we would want to. Fortunately, we've had some years where we've had some surplus funds that we can kick in for, replenishment of some of our technology and some of our security purchases. But that's not something that we can depend upon. And we would prefer to kind of build it into the regular operating budget so that we know that it will be there when we need it and we can plan on that. I know a couple of members on the committee have talked to me over the last year or so about, really needing feeling the need to do something with our bus fleet and improve, and it's going to take a lot of increased buses. We've had a report done for us, and they kind of confirmed what we already knew, that if we want to dramatically or even significantly at all improve our school start times, have a later time at the high school, earlier times at some of our elementary schools, we're going to need more buses. It's as simple as that. And those are expensive, and those are not in this budget. And we're already with the $500,000 in fund balance already over 4%. There's just we talked about this. I'm kind of tired of talking about it, to tell you the truth, but the issue of capital infrastructure, it's an important need. It's a need that's never going away. We have the documentation to show that we're in need of $70 million or so worth of projects that are in the queue. Some are more urgent than others, but all are going to need to be done in the next 5 years or so. And there is nothing in anyone's budget in North Kingstown to address those issues. So when we are lucky to have surplus funds, we devote some of that to it. When we get to a point where there's such an urgent need that we need to go to a bond, we do it that way, which a lot of people aren't crazy about, but we're forced to do that. But it never seems to be that we have the money ready to go, that we can say, 3 years from now, we're going to use these budgeted funds that we know we're going to have toward, accomplishing this project. That's where we should be, but we're not there. So to summarize and to show the numbers, the current town allocation to the school department is 55, just short of $56 million. What I'm proposing that the request from the school committee to the town would be $57,746,398, which is an increase of a little over $1.8 million, or 3.35%. If you add the use of fund balance for another $500,000, $500,000 is roughly another percent in this scenario. So we're hoping to accomplish an increase in that regard of over 4%, but 3.35 is what I am recommending as the ask from the town. Now this is less than I've put together in the past. The last few years, I've been right around 4%, and I still feel that we need over 4%. There hasn't been a year where if we go below 4%, that we don't have to start cutting some things. But we have that the fund balance money, and to go lower than 3.35 is going to be really difficult, particularly in a year where we're negotiating 2 contracts and we don't know where they're going to end up. That's the whole point of negotiating. So we need to be mindful of that, and I think this is a responsible way of moving forward. So, Mr. Blasberg, I'll give it back to you. I don't know if Mrs. King would like to add. I'm sorry.
I was going to say,
ask her to.
First,
we need to hear from Mrs. King when we're talking about the budget. So
first, I'll thank Dr. Auger for the presentation. And I was going to say, Mrs. King, I think that's a good opportunity to, let me say briefly my bit, and then I'll have you go over our budget calendar. I sort of always give this speech, but so this is basically the very first step. The superintendent proposes a budget to the school committee. The school committee will review the budget. This is a summary, obviously. We will review the detailed budget, at which point any members of the school committee can make suggestions to any modifications that they would like to make. And then ultimately, the school committee will approve a budget, which we submit to the town council. The town council will then work on the town budget as a whole and adopt its budget, where they will tell us of the amount that we have requested, what we actually receive. And if that turns out to be different, we then need to reconcile our budget one more time to what the town does. And throughout that process, there are public hearings that are held that any member of the town community can come and speak in a public forum as to either the town or the school part of that budget, as well as, as the school committee deliberates our portion of the budget at our own meetings. And with that, Mrs. King, if you could just go over the timeline there, because we have a strict budget calendar that we need to adhere to.
I just have a couple of comments before we get to the timeline. So the budget package that you have will be posted on our website, on the front page of our website. And also there are some pages that you will receive, and that's the by school breakdown. We're just putting some finishing touches on those because those are not just about the dollars per school. There are also some more information about our school and some recent scores and stuff. So we're wrapping those up. I'll make sure you get those, and then, it'll kind of be updated in the budget package. So with the state aid number, like Dr. Auger was talking about, if you look on the RIDE website right now, RIDE is showing that our state aid could be $1.3 to $1.5 million less than what we're getting this year. I did not budget that way. Last year, we had some concerns about state aid as well. I budgeted the number pretty darn close to what we're getting this year, because I do believe that for next school year, they will try to smooth things out across the districts. I do believe that in future years, North Kingstown is going to have a problem with the funding formula. Once things get back to normal, if they ever get back to normal, and if whatever normal looks like, and the funding formula is revamped, North Kingstown will not be a winner in the funding formula equation. They never are. So that's a big concern to the district. The fund balance use also is of concern. So we have committed our FY21 surplus that was just over 1.5 million spread out over 3 years. But what that means is at the end of FY24, the district has a structural deficit of $1.5 million. We've had these conversations many times before. It's not a good place to be in. It looks like FY25 budget is going to be a very difficult budget. That will also be a difficult budget because you'll be out of your ESSER funds, part of the ESSER funds, FY24 and FY25. So that's going to be a tough budget. Healthcare, every year I reach out to our representative at the trust, and he says, Mary, it's too early for me to give you any numbers about North Kingstown, which it is. He always gives me the trends that he sees in the healthcare in the country. He has quoted 5 to 8%. He believes North Kingstown will be on the lower end of that. Luckily, knock on wood, we have been for a lot of years. And I budgeted 5% as showing everywhere. And one of the other major reasons why we were able to bring this budget in lower is because we significantly increased breakage. I call it breakage. I'm probably dating myself when I call it breakage. Basically, breakage is two different things. One is perhaps we have some higher step employees who retire at the end of the school year. And although they're budgeted at the higher step, the following school year, we're able to replace them with maybe a lower step employee. The big breakage that we have, I can't say that we have benefited from because it's not a benefit for our students. The big breakage is the difference of when we have a position that needs to be filled and there's either a sub in that position or no one in that position. So that's the difference between the salary. It's also the difference between benefits as well. So over the last several years, we've seen significant, breakage because unfortunately we can't find staffing and we can't find staffing timely. I'm hoping that that doesn't continue for the district, but I have increased that number dramatically for FY23. So that's another reason why these numbers are coming in a little bit lower that could cause a problem going forward. So back to the timeline that we talked about, we have 3 school committee meetings to discuss the budget. So we have January 25th, we have a meeting back to back February 1st, and then we have a meeting on February 15th. And it's at that February 15th meeting that we would be looking for a vote on whatever the budget is going to look like that we send to the town council, the town manager. Our budget is due to the town manager by the end of business day on February 28th. So if by some reason we did need another meeting after the 15th or something happened, we wanted to have another meeting, we have a little bit of time, keeping in mind that if there are extensive changes, I need a little bit of time in order to get it to the town manager. On March 18th, we will have scheduled budget workshops with the town council. I don't know what time the school department will be scheduled. Those are normally during the day. It's all day long. I believe there might be one other workshop day if needed, but right now, March 18th is the day. April 13th is the public hearing for the budget. And then the town council will vote on either April 25th, if possible, if ready, or May 4th on the budget. And we'll know from there where we have to go with our numbers. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions from any members? Okay, if not, I believe that concludes the presentations and recognitions. The next item we'll move to is citizens' comments. So for those of you who we haven't done this in a while, but we've got a Zoom meeting this evening. So if you are in the audience and would like to speak at citizens' comments, what you do is you go under the participants tab, and there is an item to raise your hand. When you do, I will recognize people in the order that Zoom presents them to me. The only name that I know is what your Zoom name is. So if you're using your daughter's phone and that's what it says, that's the name I'm going to call. That happens a lot. So we do ask, just like always, that you please state your name and your address for the record so that we have that for our minutes. And we, as always, also ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I don't have the ability to have my little clock here, so I'll keep the time. If you go over 3 minutes, I'll ask you to wrap up, just as we normally would. So at this time, I would entertain anyone who would like to speak. If you can hit the raise your hand button. Okay, so the first person, and again, when I say I only know the name that I see, it says House of Susie. So what I will do is I'll allow you to unmute, and then if you could please state your name for the record, please. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, hi, sorry. That was how my computer was set up. This is
No, that happens all the time.
Susanna Tingley, 750 Hatchery Road. I'd just like to talk about a few of the items on the 2022-2023 Program of Studies for approval tonight. On page 57 of the agenda packet, there's a chart of graduation requirements. Under the class of 2024, there's only a 0.5 math or 1/2 year math requirement for graduation, and yet there's a 4.0 or 4 full years of PE, which is normally a 2.0 requirement. And when you add the credits up, they only come to 21.5, not the 23 required for graduation. So I don't know if it's a simple error in the numbers, but I'm not sure why we're requiring more PE than math for graduation. So I don't know if you could look that over prior to its approval. And then on page 163, the Physics for Engineering course now has a prerequisite of Algebra 1. Algebra 1 was previously allowed to be taken concurrently if the Physics for Engineering was taken at the CP level. If you're going to require Algebra 1 as a prerequisite, there needs to be a much greater effort made at the middle schools, especially DMS, to allow students to enroll in 8th grade algebra. Students are evaluated at the 6th grade level, and if they're not recommended for 7th grade pre-algebra, they're unable to take 8th grade algebra. And this process in the 6th grade evaluation excludes a great number of students and impacts their entire high school math progression. Many colleges require high school calculus, and this isn't possible if a child doesn't take Algebra 1 at the 8th grade level unless they are double up on math 1 year during high school. So I'd ask you to either reconsider the Algebra 1 prerequisite for the physics for engineering, or really work with the middle schools to allow students to participate in 8th grade algebra at a greater level. Tonight's agenda packet also contains a list of 2nd quarter appointments. Kevin Dalton was hired as a full-time interventionist and is paid out of the general fund. And I was assured by Ms. Finkelstein that Mr. Dalton's position was a temporary position paid out of ESSER funds. I was told that they would collect data on student progress, and if his assistants improve student performance, then his position would be reevaluated as a permanent position. This interventionist position and Mr. Dalton should have been vetted by the school improvement team, and I know it was not. So I want to know why he was not properly vetted. And did the administration not follow their own standards with this hiring? Lastly, tonight's agenda packet contains an estimate for installing feminine hygiene projects in all female and transgender bathrooms. And I wonder if parents know there are 6 transgender bathrooms at the high school. All other schools have transgender bathrooms, with 2 at Fishing Cove. First, at the elementary level, why are we calling these just simply unisex or all gender? I think to have a transgender bathroom for a 5-year-old is a bit much.
So I'd ask if you could please wrap up.
Okay, yep. And then as far as the 6 transgender bathrooms at the high school, are these private or multi-stall bathrooms? There's been multiple assaults across the country of children with the multi-stall transgender bathrooms, and the school committee will be responsible
Again,
for that.
if I could please ask you to wrap up. Thanks.
Yep, so I am. So I just asked at the high school level, also, can we call these simply all gender or unisex? That do we need to politicize our bathrooms? And just to the budget tonight.
Your time's up. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Next person I see is Megan. So you would be next.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
All right, good evening. I am going to address the elephant in the room because we have—
You can start with name and address, please.
Megan Riley, 15 Eden Court.
Thank you.
North Kingstown. I am going to address the elephant in the room because having been patient for 3 years, I think the victims of Aaron Thomas don't need to wait another hour to be discussed. I believe we didn't need a second investigation into the activity of Mr. Thomas because, quite frankly, you had said on November 6th, the statement after your meeting, you said that you need to have an investigation with information to determine when a violation of district policy occurred. I can show you stacks and stacks of district policies and state laws that were violated, that were broken. So I'm not exactly sure why we have to wait again till the end of January for Mr. Oliverio's second investigation. I do know that you keep saying, and you keep kind of, I don't want to say hiding behind it, but that's really the only term I can use. These boys went through a lot. They came forward first to the police, North Kingstown Police, in June of 2018. Then in August of 2018 to Dr. Auger. Then they waited. The police didn't follow through with their task force. And ultimately, they waited until February of 2021 when finally something was done. But we, the people, didn't find out until October 30th. And that was only because they pushed the media. As for the administrators involved, I believe I speak for many when I say, how can people still be employed or not put on administrative leave after all of the lies or deceit to the public and lack of documentation in regards to the allegations? From the do not recalls of Dr. Auger in Oliverio's report to Dr. Manseri's admission that, quote, she didn't write anything down, and unless she writes things down, her memory gets a little vague. No one thought these allegations important enough to write down. Everyone thought they could handle it on their own, so they didn't have to get the authorities involved. Practically every public statement given since the story broke in October has contained lies. I've pointed them out time and again. Facts are important, especially with something as huge as this case. And in a position of authority, you have to get and keep your facts straight. The first public statement Dr. Auger gave to all of us on October 30th, quote, Mr. Thomas resigned from the North Kingstown School Department on June 24th, 2021, prior to the end of the NKSD investigation, ending any further action by the North Kingstown School Department, end quote. But that was false. Oliverio's report, the conclusion of the investigation, was given on June 18th, 6 full days before he resigned. You even had an executive session on June 22nd to discuss legal advice, litigation, and employee job performance, which segues to my final point. As stated in the complaint to the U.S. Attorney, quote, 2 witnesses cite discussions with sources having knowledge of the investigation as stating that at the time Thomas resigned, they understood Thomas would be moving far out of state, end quote. Who were those sources who understood that Thomas would be moving far out of state? Greg, you, Jake, Lisa, Jen, Jenny, your lawyers? Can anyone answer me, or will anyone answer this question? Will this come out in Oliverio's second investigation? Because the public absolutely should need to know instead of just passing the trash. Secondly, at the time he resigned, they understood, quote. Does that also mean people knew he was going to resign? I want to ask all of you to answer these questions on record. And my final statement, I'm going to wrap up. This is it. Back in November, a school committee member told me I can't resign now. It would make me look like I did something wrong. But that's not true. What makes you all look like you did something wrong is all the things you lied about, refused to disclose or act upon, and covering up for all of the people and things that were wrong. When given the chance to come clean and protect the kids, time and again, you chose silence.
You're over your time.
That's what makes this all wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Brian Odell. Mr. Odell? Are you there, sir?
Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Thank you. Yes.
That's a hard act to follow. Brian Odell, 152 Salisbury Avenue. It's amazing to me the amount of hubris and arrogance displayed by this school administration and school committee. Apparently, it's never occurred to any of you that you might be wrong about anything, even when you have broken laws and violated your own policies. Many of us have tried to share points of view and relevant facts, but for the most part, we've been ignored, shamed, and patronized. Even though there are only a handful of us who speak out at these meetings, it's becoming clear we represent a growing, silent majority. The tide is changing. Parents are waking up. You are on the wrong side. Today, polling finds 77% of voters believe American culture is in a state of decay. They don't see schools solving the problem. They believe schools are part of the problem. 75% are also concerned that public schools are promoting controversial beliefs and attitudes. They see that education has taken a backseat to radical politics and that classrooms have become tools of activist social engineers rather than safe, politically neutral places of learning. That's certainly what we see. Just a few months ago, you claimed that there is no such thing as critical race theory. This week, one of you will be participating as a panelist in an online group discussing strategies to defend critical race theory from parent attacks. But I guess you feel you have to defend CRT now, right? Not just hide it? That's because the cat is out of the bag and CRT is not popular. Even when you change its name to something fancy like diversity, equity, inclusion, it doesn't matter. In a recent national poll, 60% had an unfavorable opinion of it. That's up from 14% last year. Even in North Kingstown, people are waking up. The Facebook group Parents United Against Indoctrination has grown from 0 to over 1,000 followers in just 7 months. Contrast this with the tank-based Facebook page that has only 495 followers after 14 months. When it comes to school classroom content, 78% of US voters say it's important to teach the traditional values of Western civilization, including rational thinking, individualism, and capitalism, not activism. 52% want books to be more patriotic, not books rewritten to fabricate a new reality. 68% believe schools and teachers should not be allowed to counsel students on their sexual and gender identities without parental knowledge or consent. Why? Because school personnel are not qualified to do so. These are not simply Republican or conservative views. These are results across party lines. The recent Virginia elections were a testament to that. In a state where school performance has actually declined over the past several years, it would seem that young people are suffering the consequences of progressive methods. Self-congratulations for blue ribbon awards is delusional. The whole scale is tilted downwards. At best, you're stuck in neutral. In place of foundational academic skills, you are shifting to giving students radical messaging about racial and gender identity. And rather than training them to love what is beautiful and true, your modern progressive theorists are training them to only to deconstruct it. That's sad. Luckily for us, your time is almost up. The feds are coming.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see any other raised hands. Oh, one more. Okay. It's JMC. Oh, Jay McGuinn.
Can you hear me?
I can, sir.
Okay. This is Jim McGuinn, 412 Chimney Rock Drive, North Kingstown. I have one fundamental question, and that is, in June, as has been said already, Mr. Oliverio gave a report on the 18th. 4 days later, there was a school committee meeting with an executive session. And 2 days after that, Mr. Thomas was allowed to resign. I've raised the question before, and it was in the complaint filed on Monday again. Was there some kind of deal or arrangement where it was going to be understood that Mr. Thomas was going to leave the state, potentially going to Texas? That's a fundamental question. Was there some kind of deal or understanding that Mr. Thomas was going to leave? And as part of that, was the report that Mr. Oliverio gave in June, was that shared with DCYF in June? Was there an update in June after Mr. Oliverio's report? I don't hear an answer to that. And I mean, the report is out. We know that DCYF was finally notified in February of last year, long after complaints had come in 2016, 17, 18. But again, I ask, and I think each school committee member and each member of the administration, whoever was involved in any kind of deal or arrangement that Mr. Thomas could leave and go to another state, did that happen? And was that part of an arrangement where this whole thing could be swept under the rug and no one would ever know about it? Silence is telling, folks. I think each one of you ought to seek your own representation at this point. This is not going well. It's fundamentally wrong that he could have been let go to go to another school in another state, or he went to an elementary, middle school to potentially put other children at risk after Mr. Oliverio's report. That is fundamentally wrong. I think all of you should think about that and take that to heart. That's fundamentally wrong. What happened here is a disgrace, and it put not only these kids who have been put at risk for 20 plus years, but action by people who asked for positions, were given positions to look over our children.
I'd ask you to please wrap up, sir.
Failed. You failed. That's what it looks like. It looks like you failed, and you failed to protect children. And that's just wrong. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I don't see any other hands. So seeing none, we will move on with our agenda. Next items are routine items. So I'd ask for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of this evening, which is January 11th, 2022.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand,
Second.
second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Next, I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session, which brings us to our consent agenda. Do any members have any items they would like to exempt from the consent agenda?
I need to exempt C1, C2, and E2, please.
Okay, C1, C2, and E2. I'm going to exempt D1 and D3. And I believe that is it, unless anyone else has any others. Okay, so I'd ask for a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Second from Mr. Mather. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. So first, we'll do them together because I know we can do them together, I think. Well, if I could get a motion to approve items C1 and C2.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. I'll make the second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Ms. Hoskins abstains. Next, we have item D1. I'd just like some clarification on item D1, if I could get a little. Mrs. King, you're probably the best person.
I'm sorry, Mr. Blasberg, what is D1?
Oh, sorry, that's the approval of purchase of dispensers for feminine hygiene products.
Oh, yes.
And just particularly with the clarification of what types of bathrooms we have and how they're set up.
Yeah, so I have to be very honest with you. Several years ago, I thought that that was the way that the bathrooms were to be designated. So I'll have our director of facilities look at that. I guess Mrs. Carroll says that they should say gender neutral. Maybe they do, but that was the information that I had gotten from our director of facilities and ABM. So regardless, those bathrooms are designated. They might have the wrong name on them, but they're designated as such. So I'll make sure that we change the name. So the whole genesis of this request is that there is a new law that goes into effect July 1st that requires from 5th to 12th grades that feminine hygiene products are provided at no charge and made available, readily available to students that need them. So that means that for us, that means all 9 of our schools, because as you know, our elementary schools have grade 5 in them. And those are the bathrooms designated, the number of bathrooms that we need. We need to purchase the machines, and ABM, our custodial partner, is the best one to do that from, and they will keep those machines stocked. So I need approval to make that purchase and to make that change to their contract to keep the machines stocked as needed.
Okay, and just for my clarification, the gender neutral bathrooms that we do have, are they single person, lock the door, multi-stall? Do they vary?
I have to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I'd like to know the answer to that, so.
Okay,
if that
I
is-
believe that they're different at different levels, and I can definitely get that information to you.
Thank you very much. So hearing that clarification, if I could get a motion to approve item D1.
And actually, I will tell you that I do have information that they are called gender neutral, so that designation that we have from ABM, the transgender, is not an issue. They are called gender neutral on the outside.
That's what I thought. I just,
I did too. I did too, but I was a little thrown off by the citizen. So
no,
that
sure, and
is,
I
one
understand the
problem
question and the reason I wanted the clarification. So
Right.
Everyone I have ever seen is labeled a gender neutral
Yeah,
bathroom.
I thought so
can't-
too.
The only ones I have ever seen are single individual, lock the door where it's just simply whichever person wants to use that particular bathroom can.
Right, but I will double check that also for
I'd
you.
like to know that as well. Thank you very much. So again, I need a motion to approve item D1.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, I didn't catch who made the motion.
Me, Jen
Okay,
Lehman.
gotcha. Ms. Lima, I have a second from Ms. Hildebrand.
Yep.
Any other discussion?
Can I just ask one
Sure.
clarification? I think you said this, Mrs. King, the items are free. So we're installing machines, but the machines aren't going to require the
Correct.
students to pay.
Correct.
Okay.
There'll be, it'll be a drop down so that, instead of putting in a coin and
Right.
something falls down, it's just a latch. There's some information in that packet that shows what the machine will look like. So correct, it will be free of charge.
And we have verification that they'll be kept as in stock as possible, because I think there's been a little, I know that we've been doing some of this at least at the middle school level, I know. But I'm also hearing that they're not always available. So we're going to make sure that it's available, that the
We will
machines
do
are
the
kept full.
best we can for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Just one thing to touch on what you just said is that we have been providing these already in the nurse's office. The reason why the state law was passed and why we're implementing this is to cut down on lost time with the students having to go to the nurse's office and without them having to go ask. So having them available in the restrooms just makes that process much more simplified.
Okay. I have a motion and a second, unless there's any other discussion. So all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And next we have item D2. I'm going to make a motion to table that. I was informed that that proposal isn't ready yet, so we're going to have to take that up at a later time. So I'll make the motion to table if I could have a second. I have a second from Ms. Lima. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Actually, Mr. Blasberg, is D3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Mistake. Let's
It's
back up.
D3.
Cancel that. I circled the right one and said the wrong thing. Okay.
And I
let's try
couldn't
that
get
again.
to you. I couldn't unmute myself fast enough.
So
I
we're
got too
gonna-
far down the
With
path.
unanimous consent, pretend that never happened. Anyone have an objection? Okay, let me try that again. I'm exempted and I'm making a motion to table item D3, which is the approval of the mats for the athletic programs. That's the proposal that's not ready yet. I made the motion. I'll need a second again.
So moved.
So second from Ms. Lima. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And next we have item E3, which was
E2.
exempted.
No,
Oh, sorry, why am I reading numbers wrong? I am so sorry. E2. Put my glasses on is my problem, I think. So was there, I don't remember who exempted that.
I'm just requesting to table this.
Okay, so I have a motion to table item E3. I also would like more information and on this before I approve it. So I will second that. Any discussion on the motion to table?
No discussion, but just I would also like a little bit more information about how this process is taking place, and also just to say that since this is a proposal for the department head at Hamilton, it makes sense to me just logistically to look within Hamilton first, to make sure that there's not a qualified person within that school whose learning curve would probably be significantly less, who's familiar with the acting principal right now, familiar with the programs, familiar with the school improvement team, from just all of
Especially
this
since it's a
familiarity for
short-term
a
position.
temporary position, a 5-month position. I'm afraid learning curve could be 4.5 months of that if we bring somebody in from a different school or a different setting. That's just my concern, but it's tabled, so it's a non-issue right now.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll table that for now and we can bring that up at a later time. Next, we have unfinished business. So Mrs. King, anything on the 2021 school budget?
No,
2021-22 school budget?
no.
And then we have an item for approval for item C1. I have my glasses on now. Hopefully I'll read my numbers right, which is the approval of A&E fees. Mrs. King, let's start with a motion to approve item C1.
so moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand,
Second.
second from Mr. Mather. So Mrs. King, if you could give us a little information here.
Right. So first, before I go into this, I wasn't at the meeting on December 15th. So I would like us to acknowledge Jim Grundy, who's the chair of the building committee, he did attend an asset management committee meeting for us in which they spoke about the FY23, our capital request. And Mr. Grundy was also at a town council meeting to support the school department in capital. He has always been very supportive of the district. So I really do want to acknowledge him for his time and for his effort. So let me remind you or speak to you again about the RIDE School Business Authority process, which is a lengthy one. So right now, we have a plan that's called Necessity of School Construction, and it's a 5-year plan. And our 5-year plan is going to expire as of June 2023. We're required by RIDE to have this plan on file, and hopefully we have funding for it. But this is how we get our 35% housing aid reimbursement. So needless to say, our new plan is due. Also required as of July 1st, 2018, so we just missed the current plan that we're in needing this requirement, is the need for an educational facility master plan. And as you know, we did an RFP for that and we awarded that work. And right now, Dr. Auger and I and the team, Dr. Mansiri, Mr. Waterman, Kim Carson, and Brian Lally, I would say we're about 50% complete with that educational facility master plan. RIDE gave us $150,000 in order to complete that plan. But that plan is going to be required every 5 years as well, along with this extensive assessment that you're now going to approve for A&E fees. So I am going to kind of vent here and complain a little bit, and certainly not about the School Business Authority. I think RIDE, that group is a wonderful group at RIDE, but for a district the size of North Kingstown, you will be looking at close to $500,000 every 5 years to get a 5-year asset protection plan on file, of which you may not get any funding from the town of North Kingstown in order to do any of the work to get 35% housing aid back. I personally believe that 5 years is way too short of a time frame. I think that RIDE really needs to look at this. It's not just RIDE. This is a state law, so it's the General Assembly. 5 years is just too short of a time frame when you're talking buildings. I would really like to see them go back and make every district have a really good baseline, which we do have a good baseline, and then maybe 7 to 10 years after that. Because not only is it an incredible amount of money to these districts, it is an incredible amount of time. Even though, no, I'm not the architect, I'm not the engineer, but it's a lot of time and a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot for our director of facilities as well. So that's kind of just me venting a little bit. But the whole plan of this is for us to get started on updating and adding to the extensive list of projects that we have from the currently expiring necessity of construction plan, of which we've only done we'll only have done about $15 million worth of that work. So again, we were lucky enough to have the bond from the town of North Kingstown voters, but I'm not really sure what's going to happen in the next 5 years going forward. So we're spending a lot of money to get this report done. So I personally am going to be submitting stage 1. This is in several stages because stage 1 is very administrative. We don't need extensive A&E, architectural and engineering. We just need some administrative work. We need some commentary about the district. And I'll be submitting that by the first deadline, which is February 15th. And then after that, we have 1 year from that point of which to submit the stage 2, which requires schematic design documents and really extensive information about our buildings. So I would ask that you approve that tonight. As we move forward down the line, we'll definitely give you more information on where we stand with this extensive analysis.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second on the table. So I'd ask for a motion to approve item C1. Sorry, we have the motion and the second. So any other questions? So hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Next, if I could get a motion to approve item, so we're out of unfinished business, ABC. So we're on 5.1 now, which is a school committee approval of the NEA Foundation Learning and Leadership Grant.
So
So
moved.
moved.
I'll give the motion to Ms. Hildebrand. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Lima. And again, Mrs. King, if you could give us just a brief description.
That would be Dr.
Or
Mansieri.
Dr.
Yes,
Mansieri
that
then,
would be
sorry,
Dr. Mansieri on this item.
because it's a grant. Gotcha.
So our lead, I should call curriculum coordinator for the media specialist, Jess Rodriguez, she's involved in so much at the elementary level. She applies for almost every grant that comes through for STEAM and STEM, Project Lead the Way. Anyway, she's received this before, and she has gone to ISTE before, and she received $4,500 plus $500 upon return and writing up a proposal. But she uses all of this to go improve her skills, better everything, and then come back and give PD to other media specialists and other teachers at the elementary level. And she could do it at all levels. She's fantastic. So I'm so happy. I just want to recognize her. It's like I win a lottery ticket every time she sends something my way, because she always receives it. She's nonstop, does everything for computer science for Rhode Island. That's where I first met her, when Gina Raimondo had that initiative, and she was right there, like shoulder to shoulder with me the whole time, with a couple of other people in the district. And I can't say enough wonderful things about Ms. Jess Rodriguez. So I hope that you approve this, and she will go to ISTE and also to the Computer Science Teachers Association over the summer. It pays for her travel, her hotel, and also for her registration. And
Thank you very much. Any members have any questions? If not, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, and thank you for the work that goes into getting grants like this. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have item 6, which is the high school program of studies. If I could start with a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Lima. So any discussion?
Is there a way to approve the program of studies, but work on the language just from what was changed and put back in last year, that we have to look at again, as well as what one of the constituents brought up, stating that the numbers don't add up?
Right. So that is a question that I have as well. So I don't know if it's best for Dr. Morse or Dr. Mansieri to answer that question.
But Greg, are we allowed to approve the courses and then eventually and work on some of the language in the next meeting?
I think if we're clear enough with a motion, we can approve whatever we want. But I do want to, let's start with that question, because that question's important to me too. And some clarification on that. So I had someone had pointed this out to me as well, that when you look at the column comparing the graduation requirement credits compared to the actual total, and also that as one of the citizens' comments mentioned, that the PE Health went from 2 credits to 4. And I know part of the answer from reading carefully that the math credits changed, but there's an asterisk that explains, and I know that how this works, that some math credits can be satisfied with other courses that have large math components. But can we get some clarification on that from whoever's best able to answer that question?
Dr. Morse is on the meeting. I don't know if she can answer
saw
that
her
right now,
name.
or if we need to do it next time.
Dr. Morse, are you here?
Yes, I'm
Hi.
here.
I know I saw you. Is that something you can answer tonight, or do you need to go back and look at it again, or?
So I texted Ms. Finkelstein, and we looked at that column, and yes, there's a typographical error in that last
Okay.
column.
So
4
what
math credits is still required.
Okay. So that's the answer to that question. So what should it, I mean, we can be as simple as to approve it with a modification to that column. If you have more questions, Mrs. Hoskins, or?
I do. I have more questions about, in 2020, we changed some of the language regarding the co-curriculars, and somehow in 2021, it just got put back as the old language. I'd like to really look at that again, Greg, and just approve the program of studies, but look at some of those qualifications and recommendations and the language that somehow got changed back in 2021.
Okay, well, we're still doing this early, so I think that we still have time to work on this a little more.
But if they need to get the courses out there, I feel like we could.
Do
approve
you,
the
at this point, I
courses.
mean, could we do this at our next meeting one more time, or is that going to create issues? Is it at a point where it has to, coursework at least needs to get, course lists need to be approved at this point?
When is the next meeting?
The 25th, right?
Yes,
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. I think we can squeeze it in.
Okay, so we, and apologies, we just still have a couple questions on that. We can fix that typo, get that column to work so that we're all on the same page, and then take this up at that meeting. And I think we can.
And I think they can still proceed with
finalize it.
making, the list of courses. I
Mhm.
think the language that was referenced had to do with eligibility for extra co-curriculars and athletics.
Okay,
So it won't hold up the list of courses that they need
Okay.
to start.
so let's then, I hate to do it one more time, but one more time, we have a motion on the table, but let's, this is one I try to know Robert's rules pretty solid. Having a motion and a second, I guess we'd need unanimous consent to withdraw our motion and second, and then we'll do a motion to table. So does anyone have an objection to withdrawing the motion and the second, so we don't have to vote it down? I don't hear any objections. Okay, so we'll withdraw our motion and we'll replace that with a motion to table. I'll make a motion to table item item 6, sorry, the program of studies. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So we'll table that, bring it back one more time.
I think we just need to make sure that Dr. Morse and her team know exactly what it is that we're
Yep.
talking about, and give
So-
them as much information, because I don't want us to be in this
Right.
place.
So my
again.
question is simple. I just wanted the math in that column to work and for me to understand, exactly what the requirements were there. And then Ms. Hoskins, I'll leave that to you to work with the administration to get the answers to your questions so that we can have everything ready for the next time. So next item is item 7, which is the approval of expenditures for field trips. If I could get a motion to approve. Motion, Mr. Mather. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Lima. So Dr. Ogier, you're probably the best to speak to this, I think.
I think I'm not sure that Mrs. King is still
Or
on.
Mrs. King.
She
I
is.
can,
back.
I can speak to it.
Okay, Mrs. King or
So-
Dr. Manseri, the field trip item.
Yeah, they, so last year, because of all of we put field trips on. Oh, Mary's back on. I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't realize you were back on. Oh, you're actually. we
Without
can't
your
hear you.
sound.
Do I need
So we didn't,
to?
it was just to go on with the field trips, they're unbudgeted. So this year, because prior to Omicron, we wanted to get the field trips back on. It seems like a lot of teachers and students really wanted to incorporate that. So we're bringing them back in. And we thought, based upon time, normally we've done about the last time we had to do field trips, we had to pay for everything. We had about $60,000. This time we're asking for $20,000 to get the field trips out in the springtime. And Mary, can you hear you yet or no? Nope. still not.
Your sound's not coming through, Mary.
Okay, I mean, that's enough. We've
Okay.
all been briefed on it. I like to, not everyone in the audience always knows what we do, and I'm not always the best at explaining it. So I just like a quick explanation.
Yeah, and it's basically, just so you know, it's K-8. The high school has such a larger population that they have to do things. Barbara works with the department chairs. They bring the field trips to the department chair meetings, and they talk about how it's affecting the particular class, and then they work it out, what they're going to do and how they're going to go. So those things, we just think that the $20,000 is a good approximation of what we're going to need through the end of the school year. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I will point out that the state legislature did make some changes to the statute that had caused us all kinds of problems. I will say it's still not entirely clear, but it's better, which is good. And Ms. Hildebrand, I always ask you, did we have a motion in a second on that? I usually
Yes.
write down and I forgot to write it down. I'm just double checking myself. Thank you.
Yep.
So with a motion in a second, any other questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, if we could start with a motion to approve item 8, which is the substitute staffing rates.
Before we make, can we have a discussion before making that motion, or do we have to have a motion to discuss it?
Yep. So what we usually do is you're not supposed to have a discussion without a motion because
Okay.
otherwise what are you discussing? So that's
Okay.
why we can amend or whatever after that.
Okay.
So I like to start with a motion to approve and then we can go from there. So if I
Okay,
could get
I'll
a
make the
motion. to approve-
motion.
Okay, motion from Ms. Lima. I mean, unless someone wants to specifically start out with, I want to.
Can anybody hear me now?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Here you
Yeah,
go.
you're back just in time. So I have a motion.
Just
Do I
in
have a second?
time. I do have a couple of comments to
Hold
make
on,
on.
Mrs. King, before
Wait.
you do that, I want to get this done and then. we'll
Okay,
do-
great.
Yep. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Mr. Mather, I have a second. So Mrs. King, if you could speak to the substaffing rates and we'll kick off discussion.
Okay, so aside from anything that Mrs. Lima has to say, so I want to apologize. I was not at the last meeting and I have down here that the daily rate for teacher subs went to 140 a day, so that's not right. And it makes a difference because there are two items that need to change on here that we're proposing tonight. So the line item that says guidance, the guidance daily sub, that would need to go to 145 a day, and that's a separate category, and we didn't do that last meeting. So that needs to go to 145 a day to match the other daily sub rate. We're also asking that there be an increase in the clerk sub rate and in the TA sub rate, but also down below, there's several categories that we don't really use, but we do need to have on file for state purposes, where it starts teacher over 135 days, year one, that needs to be $145 a day. And all the way down, we need to add $1 a day to that. And I'll explain that. So normally, before we were outsourced for subs, what we were required to do is if you did happen to have a sub that came back after more than 1 year, you would need to put them on your step scale, your teacher step scale. So we don't have subs that come back, but we do need to have this convention. And we are allowed to have a convention through the agency that's different than putting a teacher on a step scale. So these need to go from 145, 146, 147, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, and 153, all the way down. So there's really not a lot of changes that really that we are paying out, but it's administrative changes that we need to make and make sure that our outsourced vendor has that information.
Mr. Chair, before you continue, I understand that Ms. Hoskins has been kicked off.
Oh, well, we need to fix that, don't we? Hold on a second.
Trying to come back in, but I don't see her.
No, I don't yet either.
She needs to.
She popped up and then she went away. She was there.
Okay, so
She
we'll.
just told me she got kicked off and she can't get back on.
Okay, let's give her a moment to try to fix that technical problem. And I apologize, folks. These are the foibles of a Zoom meeting.
And you guys thought it was just me, didn't you?
I had it happen to me a couple times. I don't see her coming back in.
I saw her pop up and I tried to admit her and then she disappeared.
She is there all the way at the end. Or actually, I say all the way at the end. I see her.
Yep.
On my
Okay.
screen.
Why do I not?
You're seeing.
She's in under her real screen name.
Yeah.
Not Jen Hoskins.
Yep.
She is as Hoskins or she's
No,
something?
she is not.
Okay,
Here
all
it
right.
is. Here she comes.
If you can raise your hand, I can find you much faster.
Mr. Chair, I just changed her name.
Okay, that should help too. Now I got it. All right, now we got you. Sorry, we got a lot of people in the room. It makes it harder to find. Okay,
She's saying she can't unmute.
she should be able to now. Can you try again, please?
I can now.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Thank you. We got you back. All right. So what I was about to ask, Mrs. King, I just want to confirm. So we have the very detailed chart that's in our agenda packet. Those are the changes, the numbers that you're reading. They seem to line up. That's what you're proposing that we approve, correct?
In that and two other changes, which
Okay, sorry, I
are
just want to make that note. So
Yep.
so we need to amend our motion then, but I want to have some discussion before we do. So just so I make a note to make it clearer for me, what are the other, in addition to what we have in this proposal, what other changes are you proposing that we make?
the clerk hourly rate go to $16.50 per hour. And the TA daily rate, non-CDP, goes to $115 a day. Those were the only other two changes outside of the teacher ones that we just discussed.
Okay. Now, before I amend anything, I want to see where our discussion takes us here, but we just need to make sure that we, as long as everyone agrees, that we make those two additional changes in addition to what is in our packet as the proposal. So, having heard your proposals, any school committee members have any questions or comments as well?
I do.
Okay. Ms.
So
Lehman.
back at the 12:15 meeting, when we had this discussion, before we made the increase to the daily teacher subrate, there was a step difference between, for both teachers and TAs, the regular teachers and TAs, and then the teachers and the TAs in the clinical day program. Like there was a pricing difference between the two of them. When we made the increase on the 15th, we did not make that increase for the subrate for the CDP teachers. So now actually the subrate for the teachers in the clinical day program make less than the teachers who aren't in the clinical day program. I think, and then the same thing is going to happen if we make an adjustment with the TAs. I think going back to what like the pricing difference was between TA and CDP and non-CDP, I think we need to kind of look at that and make sure all the pieces fit together correctly, because before there was like a $35 a day difference and a $25 a day difference. And if we make this change, one's still making less and the other one is making the exact same.
So I agree that we need to change the teacher CDP rate. So that difference would end up going to,
I came up with 180, Mary. Your numbers.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is because it's 135. So it was the difference between 90 and 135.
Yep.
On the TA rate, I would say though, between the regular TA or the non-CDP TA, I'm not entirely sure that we are getting in my mind, when you're paying a higher rate, you're getting a higher quality. And I think with the limited amount of TAs that are out there right now, I'm not really entirely sure that making a big differential in the TA for the CDP is giving us the value that we should be getting out of that. But then with that being said, it's certainly up to you guys, but they're really, from what I'm seeing, we're getting TAs that are TAs. We're not getting TAs that are behaviorally, certified or experienced for Davisville Academy. So that's the only thing that I would throw out there before you guys make that decision.
Does it require a different certification to be a TA there than it does at another school?
Well, if we were hiring an employee, it does, and it should. But again, like I said, we are having a hard time with all, employees and sub alike when it comes to TAs. TAs are really the area that we have struggled with for many years, much more so than teacher areas. Teachers, when it comes to subs, math and science, those really hard disciplines. And then of course, on days where we have very high absenteeism. But right now, I think that our TAs we're kind of struggling. So we're taking whomever will go to Davisville Academy, whoever that we can get from our vendor. There really is no distinction at this point with a TA that has any different qualification to be at Davisville Academy as compared to any of our other schools.
Okay, thank you. So then the only other thing was I wanted to put a counter proposal out there for the TAs to raise it from, instead of 115 to make it to 125. And that's more in keeping in line with the percentage increase that we gave to the teachers. But keeping in mind what Mary said, I would say no difference between the non-CDP and the CDP. So make both TA rates 125. So that would be what I would want to do. That's what I'm putting out there. And then change the teacher CDP rate, like Mary said, to 180, keeping that consistent with the other changes. So I don't know if that's too much to do in an amendment and we need to start over, but those are my thoughts.
So Mrs. King, if we were to go to 125 on the TA, what would that throw other things off? And why I'd like to get your take on that if I could.
No, that would be fine. So I can recap everything as we just discussed, if that would be easier for you guys.
I think I have it, but let's do it just so that I can write it all down and make sure my
Yep.
lines line up. So, yep, that sounds good.
So we're asking to change the clerk hourly rate to $16.50 an hour. We are asking to make the guidance substitute, that's a teacher's designation, $145 a day. We are looking to change the teacher in the CDP program to 180 a day. We're looking to change the teacher assistant non-CDP, according to Mrs. Lima's request, to 125 a day. We would be asking to change the teacher assistant in the CDP program to 125 a day. We would then take the teacher over 135 days and make that 145 a day.
Sorry, over 135 days?
Yes, that's the next
then-
designation
And
there.
what was
Year
the amount
one,
again?
145 a day, that's year one.
Yep.
And then we would go down the line, adding $1 a day to year 2, year 3, year 4, all the way through year 10. We never have that, but they are designations that we have to have in our system.
So year 2 through 10 we'll add $1 a day to your proposal.
Right. So 145, 146, 147, et cetera.
All right, I've got that. Before I make that motion, if I were to make that motion, does anyone else have anything they object to or like to add? All right, so we'll make a motion then. I'm going to make the motion that we approve the changes.
So are you amending? Are you?
Yeah, so you're right. Sorry, I'm
You're
going to make a
amending
motion
the
to
current motion.
amend the current motion, and it would read that we approve the proposal that is in our agenda packet as proposed by the administration with the following changes: that we would have clerks at $16.50 per hour, guidance substitutes at $145 per day, teachers in the CDP program, $180 per day, teacher assistants, non-CDP at $125 per day, teacher assistants in the CDP at $125 a day, teacher assistants over 135 days would be $145 year one. And then to this chart, we will add $1 per day for years 2 through 10. Mrs. King, did I get that right?
You sure did.
All right, then if I could get a second.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hildebrand. So if you remember, like last time, we're going to vote on the motion to amend, and then we need to vote on the main motion either as amended or not amended. So any further discussion? All those in favor in the motion to amend, which will change our motion to be this? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion to amend passes unanimously. Now we need to vote on the main motion as amended. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Next, we have a discussion on the Rhode Island Department of Health COVID guidelines. So Dr. Roget, I'll hand this to you. I just want to point out, we make our agendas. We have to post our agendas 48 hours in advance of a meeting, and we decide what's going to be on them a little bit before that. And things were very, very, very much in flux at the time of our agenda.
Right.
So we wanted to have an opportunity to discuss these changes at this meeting because we really didn't know what was going to happen. So Dr. Ajay, you can let us know what did happen.
Well, you all got an email outlining what did happen. On Friday, we were able to put together, our translation of the guidelines. The guidelines came out Thursday night into Friday. And I worked on that with some of our administrative team and with Colleen Schnack, our head nurse, who's been doing unbelievable work, as all of our nurses have been doing. Doesn't make the coronavirus go away. It doesn't make it so that, there's a lot of spread of the coronavirus right now, and we need to be mindful of that. But it does, the CDC guidelines going to 5 days for quarantining and for the monitor and stay feature of this new plan really does help to keep more kids in school, to keep more of our staff in school. Both of those are critically important. But it does put the onus on families to be, monitoring all the more closely. That if you have symptoms, it's best to stay out. That's whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. So, we got to a point last Thursday where we had over 24 staff at the high school who could not make it in, and roughly 300 students out of our high school is about 1,400 total. So, it was just too difficult to, cover what we needed to cover with that kind of a shortage of staff. So that's why we went to a distance learning day for them. We came close at some other schools. We definitely do not want to go to distance learning days. And I think that the new guidelines, I know that they're going to help us to avoid that. Things have gotten significantly easier, particularly on staffing, on Monday and Tuesday. We're not completely out of the woods, but it's those numbers help. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, we were afraid that the state was going to take no action and we might have to do something. Action has been taken. So thank you very much for that report.
Yeah, just people have been writing to me and asking, the CDC changed as I think of December 31st. So why aren't you doing something sooner? It wasn't because we didn't want to. We and just about every other school department have been on calls with all superintendents and people from the Department of Health saying this is what we want to do. And everyone's in unison that this is what we want to do. And it would still take several days, if not more than a week, to get to the point where there are actual guidelines being issued that we can follow. And we've been a district all along that says we're going to follow the Rhode Island Department of Health. They're the experts. That's what we pay them to do. So it's the responsible thing to do to follow their advice. And that's what we did. So we waited till last Friday. And now we're in a better position, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from any members? Then next we have reports in our packet. Anyone have any questions on any of the reports? If not, we've reached the end of our agenda and I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand, second from Ms. Lima. All those in favor? Aye. And then we are adjourned. Thank you all for attending.